Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lang Focus channel. Today, I'm going to talk about a question that I've been getting quite a lot recently, and that is, what kind of job can I do with my foreign language skills, or what kind of job should I do if I'm interested in foreign languages? Now, this is a question that I respect because I've witnessed a lot of people investing years of their life into studying a language, kind of with the assumption that it would naturally improve their career or give them new opportunities, but without having a plan for how they would use that language, they didn't really benefit from it and ended up being quite frustrated. The young people who are asking this question early on, I think you are thinking about things the right way. But the answer to this question depends on just how you imagine your life in the future and how far you really want to go with your language study. Now, some jobs are specifically language related. Other jobs are not specifically language related, but a foreign language could be an asset. And for other jobs, it's not really necessary at all, but it might be useful for your overall lifestyle. I'm going to talk about those three types of situations. So first up are jobs that are specifically language related. For these jobs, you need to have some expertise in the language. You need to have a deep understanding of the language. So the first kind of job is to teach a language. Here in Japan, I know a lot of people who teach English. I also know people who teach other languages like French or Spanish. Now, even if you don't have a lot of qualifications, there are some opportunities to teach your language, especially if it's a major global language and especially if it's English. But the more qualifications you have, then of course, the better opportunities you get and the higher pay you can get, the better positions you can find. Now, if you want to study a foreign language that's not your native language and then teach that language, then you're looking at a situation where you really need to get some expertise. You really need to get qualifications. You should get like a master's degree or maybe a PhD or qualifications that show that you know that language very well at an academic level, at a level, not just a conversational level. That's if you're going to teach a language that's not your native language. Now, another type of job that is language specific is becoming a translator or an interpreter. Now, the difference between those, just to clarify, a translator is somebody who translates texts. They translate written material from one language to another. But an interpreter is somebody who translates speech. They translate the things people are saying live in real time as they are speaking. Now, being a translator or an interpreter requires you to have a very deep understanding of that language because there's really no room for error or misunderstanding. You have to translate sometimes very important information, and mistakes could be a big problem. So you need to have very good, almost native level skills, especially if you're interpreting in real time, but also you need to learn the skills of translation or interpreting. Both are separate skills that you need to learn on top of knowing the language. So for these jobs that are specifically language related, there's really no room for language dabblers. You really need to have a comprehensive understanding of that language, and you have to be able to show that you can use that language at almost a native level. Next up are jobs that are not specifically language related. They are basically focused on another skill that you need, but the language is an additional asset. The first kind of job is one that requires some technical expertise, but having a language on top of that will give you some extra opportunities. So an example that I've heard is from an engineer. His company sells some sort of machines to companies around the world, and they send this engineer to those companies so he can teach people how to use those machines in their factories. So he learns foreign languages so that he can do that. I believe this guy in particular was working in Indonesia, so he learned Indonesian to be able to teach those people in their native language. Another example career is business with a regional focus. For example, maybe you get a commerce degree or you get a master's of business administration, an MBA, but also you have some language skills and maybe you work for a company that does business in that region or does business with companies in that region. Another example career is the foreign service, being a diplomat, being someone who works at your country's embassies abroad. When you work in the foreign service, I think that often involves some kind of language training before you are sent abroad, but knowing some languages in advance before you apply is probably a big asset. Another example is being a tour guide. Now, a tour guide's main focus is not the language, it's the history and it's anthropology and all of those sorts of things, but having a language that they can explain things in that will help them have other opportunities. So maybe you might specialize in tourists from Japan, you learn Japanese, you can be a tour guide for Japanese tourists. Depending on where you live, another option might be to do some other job in the tourism industry or open a business in the tourism industry. If you live on Bali Island in Indonesia, then you would be crazy not to learn English and Japanese and maybe some other languages that are common amongst tourists. Another career is being a cabin attendant. Now, their main focus is on safety training, on emergency response, that kind of thing. But knowing a language, that's an additional asset. Probably they need to know English in most cases, but They also need to know the language of the country they're working in or of the destination that they often fly to. Maybe they don't need to know it fluently, but knowing some of that language will help them deal with the passengers on the plane. So if you live in Los Angeles and you often fly to Asia, then knowing Japanese or Korean or Mandarin or another language like that would probably be a big asset. Now, all of these jobs I just talked about, they're focused on another important skill. They're not focused on language, so you don't need a specific language qualification in most cases, but you need to be able to demonstrate that you can use that language on the job. That's the most important thing. The third type of job I want to mention is one that doesn't really have any language requirement, but learning that language would be useful for your off time and for your overall lifestyle. So let's say that you live in Singapore and your company does business in English, then you don't have to learn any other language. People in Singapore speak English, but nearby is Malaysia and Indonesia. So let's say you want to travel there on your off time. Learning Malay or learning Indonesian would be very useful in that situation. So think about the kind of lifestyle that you want to have and think about how languages fit in with that. Let's say that you want to live the corporate expat lifestyle in some place like Hong Kong, then you can study Cantonese while you get your finance degree or you get your MBA or whatever. If you want to be a programmer and you can program from your laptop anywhere in the world, then think about what country you would like to live in and learn the language of that country. If you're an avid traveler and you love the idea of living in different countries all the time, then you can learn how to do businesses on the internet and you can learn the language of whatever countries that you want to spend an extended period of time in. Or if you want to learn a foreign language and you want to someday reach an expert level and be able to teach that language, then plan ahead for that. Maybe go for your master's degree, your PhD, try to really get an understanding and overall knowledge of that language. So these are just my thoughts on it based on things that I know and things that I've heard, but a lot of the viewers have different perspectives. Some of you probably have jobs that involve foreign languages, so we want to know what you think. If you have any other ideas or any questions about this topic, leave them down below. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.
These are my notes. Okay. Thank you.